Asad Irfan, Naveed Haque, thank you so much for joining the Untold podcast, brothers. Fueled by Dara, coffee, the official drink of the Untold podcast. It's a pleasure to have you guys on.
Can I open this?
Yeah, you can.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Do you like it? Do you
Super
like
excited.
drinks?
I don't know what this is,
Can I
but
take
it
a
tastes
sip
wonderful.
before I tell you if I like it?
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead. I think that's a passion fruit mango.
Ooh, can I crack mine open
wait
too?
a second. This is noise.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good.
I like this.
I'm not going to open mine. I'll leave it, but I'm drinking the
Are
coffee.
these canned locally?
Yes, they actually did it on the spot before giving it to us. They
Wow.
wrap it right in front of you.
I'm a fan of the minimalistic branding. So
No, they're awesome. Happy July 4th to you guys too, man. July 4th. This is why we're doing a little July 4th special.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got the
We're
funky
here.
hats on.
We're here.
Speaking of that.
Listen, for you guys having such funky hats on, you got to be a little bit more optimistic
Well,
than this.
I think I
July
just
4th.
put this hat on just so I could do this to it.
Yeah.
What's happening?
Oh, is that right?
Oh.
Yeah, we're just
Oh, wow.
go ahead
Oh,
and
wow.
cover this up.
Wow.
We're covering this up today.
Well, can't you be Palestinian and American?
I'm not Palestinian or American, so
Is that right? What? Okay. We'll get into that.
We're
We'll
just
get into
Muslim
that.
here.
Before we do, I think it's appropriate that we, do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I love this.
Say,
Should we get up for it?
Can you see?
I'm not getting up for it. Should I take a knee?
Where do you look? There's a ribbon right here. You can look at it.
Can I take a knee?
Wait, you can look at my back. You can look at my.
I refuse to stand up for this.
Fight.
I love this. Can we also play the Pakistani national anthem? Shout out Pakistan. I'm only Pakistani citizen here, not American.
Listen, we get your a DECA whatever.
DACA.
A DACA.
Let's make sure that we're on top of our stuff.
The majority of us here are American citizens, so
Okay.
you know.
All right. Let's single somebody out. Naveed, you want to back me up a little bit?
You didn't stand up for the pledge. The
Yeah,
national
Pledge
anthem.
allegiance.
I
Yeah.
was
National
straight up
anthem.
the flag,
He was.
and he stood up, and
He embodied the American identity,
This hat is heavy.
the burden that you carry on your shoulders.
I love it. But
okay. Well, since you did this whole thing, he's like, I'm going to surprise you guys. All right, this is the
it's a
thing.
good
you did.
surprise. What'd you think?
Yeah, I like it.
I don't know how it looks like at all.
Eh.
Raheem, shout out Raheem. He'll teach me. He showed me.
It looks good.
Raheem, the camera guy. Shout out.
So I have a little Muslim American trivia for you guys to start.
Ooh.
You ready? How many masjids are there in America today?
4,032.
That was quick.
Yeah, that was. I don't think he even thought about that one.
Okay, well, what are we considering masajid?
Just
Like
masjids
a
and Islamic
musalla would be
centers.
considered a masajid also, an Islamic center, like a mass.
Just answer the question. Masjid and Islamic
Hey,
center.
man.
I think in this case, it's a valid question
It
because
is a valid question.
it's a square, right? It could be a line on the ground, and you need to have all prayers need to happen. But I think in this question, it's like if you went to Google Maps and typed in masjid or mosques, what would be the query result?
So you said what? 4,000 what?
4,332, I think I said.
I'm
We can
gonna
run the tape
go
back.
with. Wait, we're counting. We're not counting Nation of Islam, right?
No.
Okay.
Oh.
So I'll go with. Let's go 3,800.
Wow. Okay. I
So
didn't know you
Price
guys
is
would
Right.
think that. You guys really overvalue numbers here. It's more than 1,500 Islamic centers and
So I
masjids
win.
around the country. All right. Guess the population of American Muslims today.
I Googled this about 3 weeks ago. I know Texas has. I want to let you say the number first because I feel like
You said the first one, right?
Yeah, I said the first one. Right.
I mean, I feel like we're what? Not even 1% of the population here in the United States.
The
Maybe 1%?
population size. So you by
Yeah,
million.
no, I'm trying to base it off of what 300 million. So I'll say maybe 15 million Muslims.
Lord. Okay.
Oh, wow, that's
Yeah.
a big
I'm
population.
hoping
This
a lot
guy
of people are
is really
converting.
Yeah,
optimistic.
I know.
about
I know
where we are.
Texas is the largest Muslim population, if I recall correctly, and I think that's around 1 million. So I want to wager. I'm not a gambling man, so I just like saying that as a phrase. But I would say 3 million.
Okay, you were definitely closer. It's 4 to 7 million.
Okay.
No, inshallah, 15.
Inshallah.
Inshallah, one
I
day.
think we'll do it.
Yeah. As single
I
men,
don't know about we,
as
but
single
yes.
men, we'll get there. Inshallah.
What percentage of American Muslims are proud to be American?
Ooh.
That is a very good question.
Just answer.
We still got the
30%.
South.
30%.
Oh my lord. Yeah. What about you?
I'm gonna say about 15.
92%.
Golly.
Yeah.
That part of this country?
I'm the majority.
Yeah, man.
How about that?
How many American Muslims say they pray 5 times a day?
I want to
They say, right?
They say. This is according to Pew Research.
I'm going to say 72%.
I'm gonna say 30%.
You were closer again, Naveed. 42%.
Golly.
What percentage of American Muslims are black?
I'm gonna say. Yeah, I keep saying 30, but it just sounds like a really good number,
It is a pretty good number.
right? I'm gonna say 30% again.
Okay.
I'll say 22.
You were closer, 20%.
Well done.
Between non-Muslim European women, this is the last one. Between non-Muslim European woman, non-Muslim American woman, and Muslim American woman, which of these subsects are the most educated?
Muslim American women.
I agree with that statement.
Yes. Muslim American women are actually some of the most educated groups of people on the planet. Actually, Muslim American women.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
I think one of the first, fact check me on this one, but wasn't one of the first like female universities in the world was actually in Morocco,
Yeah.
right? So
I think it was the first university.
and this is like
Can you search that up, Ryan?
1100 something like that. So way back the dial here.
Yeah. So before we continue, I was going to do this anyways, but thank you, Asad, for I like the stunt. That was a good stunt right there.
I had to kind of get you ready for it, brother.
That we can first.
Western College.
In Georgia.
No, that doesn't
maybe
even
like-
make sense.
Maybe Raheem, first female
university.
Muslim.
The oldest
No.
university in the world.
But Fatima.
It was founded in
Fatima.
857, 859 AD by Fatima al-Fihri as a masjid and later became a leading educational and spiritual center.
In the golden age.
Yeah, very nice.
Nice.
But yeah, obviously we're celebrating July 4th. We got our funky hats on. Got my bow tie going, American flag all around. But we also got our keffiyehs. You know, this episode cannot go on without acknowledging and recognizing the fact that our country, even if we are proud citizens of it, has been participating, supporting financially, morally, and politically, and militarily the ongoing genocide in Gaza, Palestine, where over 50,000 of our Palestinian brothers and sisters are being murdered. And honestly, that goes to my second point, though, which is that it is also important for us to show our pride and our identity as American Muslims. There was a study done by Sara Asrari, I think her name was. And she said that the best way to stop the identity crisis and insecurity of young American Muslims is by developing a healthy national and religious identity. The study found that by doing so, it increased the confidence of young Muslims, as well as increased their civic and religious contributions. So we cannot give in to the narratives, at least in my personal opinion, we can't give in to the narratives of ultra-conservatives, far-right non-Muslims, and ultra-conservative far-right Muslims, who oddly both agree on many issues. And one of the issues they agree on is, you can't be Muslim and American. You don't belong in this country. Your cultures clash, your morals clash. And us as middle grounded Muslims believe, no, we can be Muslim and American. And in a world where it's full of nation states, our nationality, we cannot help that this is the country that we are born or raised in. Just like people in Dubai can't help what their country is doing, and people in Saudi Arabia can't help what their country is doing. Yet no one is telling them to give up their identity, but people are telling us to give up our identity. And I think we should be proud of where we're from, just like everyone else is. And that goes to my third point, and you guys feel free to comment on what I'm saying here, and you could disagree, obviously. That no one saw what the Mongols, the Romans, and the Persians were going to be. No one saw that coming. The Mongols straight up made the streets of Baghdad, it was narrated, up to your knees with blood. The Romans, now Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Turkey, Egypt, was historically a Christian empire. And the Persians, who are now some of the most historically participated, both culturally, academically, and scientifically to the Muslim history and society, were pagan and one of the most powerful empires. And I personally believe, I actually genuinely believe this, that the Western conglomerate since it's never gotten Islam before, and this is one of the first really waves since the 60s that it's gotten Islam in this way, I actually believe this country is going to end up a Muslim empire too.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Do you guys disagree with anything I was saying?
You want to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to have the hope for that, right? And that is, I think you brought up a lot of great points. So first and foremost, I definitely align with you on not missing. I think I don't want to say it's easy, but I think sometimes it can be easy to be like, I don't want to identify as an American or not have that fight, because it is an uphill battle to shift the tide that America has been going on since World War II. And that is being very imperialistic in its endeavors, militarily speaking, right? Whether it be in Vietnam, whether it be in involvement in Bangladesh and Pakistan at that time, or even expansion to Hawaii. I mean, pretty much a lot post-World War II, U.S. has had that history. But I don't think it should take away our hope as citizens in this country on making the change that America can truly be and living up to its ideals that we all embody and believe in, right? I think to your point of the last thing you had mentioned, what was it that you had said?
That the Mongols, Romans, and Persians were.
Yeah, but I think that's valid, but it's not justifiable for our actions, right? And I think it's important to know that I think a lot of the lack of access to education, how things were back then, is a lot different than what we have as normal citizens have accessibility to now. And I think we should feel empowered by the resources that we have as citizens. That I think it's, forget who is said, but the most powerful office in this country is that of a citizen, being able to go vote and being able to advocate for the things that you believe in. And I think that's something that we have unique here, that I think we need to take leverage on. And that's something I'm prideful of as an American, is that we do have that capacity of power to make that change.
Yeah, I think I would have a question to kind of what you're saying. It's we have to first identify like what an American identity is, because an American identity in Texas is completely different than an American identity in California, right? If you contrast that and then we put Muslims inside of that, then a Muslim American in California might view the world and how the United States is completely different than how a Muslim in Texas or in Alabama or in Florida might view it. So the identity of Americans is a very complex identity, in my opinion. And that is the part where I struggle with seeing. Yes, I agree with the both of you. Yeah, Muslims and Muslim American can definitely be a thing, but we have to align ourselves in a way where we're not strictly to the right or to the left, like you said. So I think it's a question within a question that you have to continue to answer. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, I think what you talk about, like the ultra right, ultra left, right, and then being more common, I think falls under like the horseshoe theory of politics, right? Are you familiar with that?
No.
So the horseshoe theory is pretty much, if you have, I don't have a horseshoe with me, but we're in Texas, so it kind of makes sense. But a horseshoe theory, U-shape, right? And so if you look at the political identity spectrum as such, the more far right you get or the more far left you get, you're a lot closer to each other in your ideals than you are to the center. The thing with middle ground politics, that something I'm still like toiling around with, is that your definition of middle ground shifts depending upon the extremes at the right and to the left, right? So when both sides currently in the U.S. political spectrum, whether it be far right or far left, in particular to policies, to the situation in Gaza, is kind of the same thing, whether you go left or right. And so what is the middle ground of that, right? When both extremes are saying the same thing. And so I think at a certain point, you have to break away from whatever structure that is being presented to you, because the middle ground between genocide or genocide is not a middle ground I want to be in, right?
I don't think the far left and the far right are pro-genocide. I would actually say the far right is anti-Israel and the far left is anti-Israel.
But I think in terms of like military policies they're advocated for and pushed for are very much pro-war.
Are you talking about the Democratic Party and the Conservative Party?
Correct.
Okay,
Only
that's not
strictly
far left, far right.
What would you define as like far right or far left then? Because like in terms of like voting here in the U.S., if you go far right, would you identify that as Trump, or is there something more than that?
I would say it's a little bit more than that.
Okay.
All right,
so would you say that back in 2008 during the election of, Obama and like McCain, right? So during those policies, if you look at a lot of policies that were Democratic back then, were actually, compared to now, is very far left to today's standards. And so I think like the policy changes are getting more and more right-leaning And I guess for my perspective of far right and far left is that. Now I think maybe is your far right definition like neo-Nazis and things like that?
Fascism.
Yeah.
Fascism? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, like the not Jackson Hinkle. There's another guy. I forget his name. The one that's like banned, but he hates us, but he also hates Israel.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's usually the far right. To me.
Right. Okay. I see.
And then the far left. You guys know they're pretty colorful.
Yeah.
But they also hate Israel. You know. But that's an interesting point. But what I didn't understand completely from you, though, is my point with the Mongol and the Persian and the Roman is that if you look at history, history teaches us. And these three empires were very hostile to Muslims. And one of them was as murderous, if not more murderous, than America has been. I mean, America has killed over 1 million Iraqis and Afghanis. Let's make that clear.
Right.
But then they ended up Muslim. So why do you disagree with
Who
that?
ended up being Muslim?
The Mongols, Persians,
yes. Yeah.
And the
Mongols, Persians,
Right.
and the
Byzantines.
Romans.
Yeah.
I would say so. This is, subhanAllah, we were actually talking about this last night in one of our classes, and there's a book. I don't know the full title of it, but Mona Hassan is the one that wrote this book, and she talks about how the first fall of the caliphate was during the rise of the Mongols, when the Mongols sacked Baghdad and killed as many people as they could, and they brought people to the front and burned the Qur'ans and the Hadith books in front of them to show them this is what we'll do to your city and your knowledge. And there's a story, don't quote me on how authentic it is, but it was a story that has been used. As the Mongols were burning the books, right, there was a mother that brings her young child to the front of the Mongols, and she said to the Mongols, said, you can burn as many books as you want, but this kid has the Quran memorized in his heart, so you can never take that away from us. That being said, during the time the Abbasids fell, there was still another Muslim empire that was going on in Andalus, the Umayyads, right? Or the Spanish Umayyad Empire. I think the part where we're different now, and this might be a little bit of a pessimistic view, but during that time of the Romans, of the Persians, of the Mongols, Muslims were still pretty powerful in that say. I think now we're in a place where we're politically very weak. We're very dependent on Western countries. I'm not talking about Muslim Americans. I'm talking about the East, right? So coming back from that, and inshallah, of course, we would love to see the United States become a majority Muslim country. That would be beautiful, right? And I'm not saying that's not possible. It is. But there were other things in place for those three empires to convert to Islam than it would be for the United States. And that kind of goes back to the Crusades, right? The Crusades were created to push that agenda of getting Islam out of Jerusalem, right? And all of that kind of adhered to nation states, to the birth of the United States, and how now they're impacting Islam, quote unquote, war on terror, quote unquote, and how things are happening in the Middle East. So I think it might be a tougher agenda for us than it might have been for people back then, because there was still a lot of power. I think Muslims have power, but we've sided with the West. Back then they did not. They sided with each other, right? And there's a lot of internal fighting that might need to happen in order for us to actually become powerful again. If you look at the story of, Saladin Ayyubi, he fought more Muslims than he did the Christians, the Crusaders.
Yeah, but the Muslims were as divided as they are now.
Exactly. So what I'm saying is, in order for us to maybe get back to that point, right, we would have to go down that route first. I was going to say, tying it back to the American Muslim identity, I think one thing that I've seen in the past 9 months, which is so beautiful, is all Muslims, regardless of what they believe in, coming together, standing for Palestine. Mm-hmm. I think, and if like that's the banner that we need to stand on together, then that's the banner it should be, right? Like, I think, and that's what matters, right? It's, in my opinion, how do we bring someone that maybe politically thinks very differently of me, or thinks very differently, right, but is still a Muslim? How do I still agree with that person? Or we can agree that Palestinians are getting killed, they're getting completely wiped out. So we need to pick one thing. I would wish a hopeful thing would be the kalima, la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, would be the reason why everyone comes together. But if we're being honest with ourselves, the average Muslim, what you said was what, 42% say that they pray?
Yeah.
They pray 5 times a day?
By Pew Research, so it's a little off.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know, Allahu Alam, but at the end of the day, what I'm saying is, if the average Muslim is struggling with Salah, struggling with, Islam, then that's unfortunately not the use case that we can pick to bring people together. Right now, it's Palestine. So if we can come together as American Muslims, whether you're Shia, Sunni, whatever, and you stand for Palestine, then we can also see that, inshallah, happening with the Muslim countries if they can step up.
Inshallah. Rotate the wheels, it'll help.
Rotate?
Yeah. If you know the wheels that are under it, just rotate the wheels so it's like...
Is that better?
This drink is amazing, by the way.
Yeah, this is really good.
Yeah?
I'm making a slow burn just so we can maintain the logo as long as possible.
Okay, I might ask for
It's
another.
okay, you can still kind of see it.
No, I really like it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, man.
ASMR.
One of the things, though, I think the unity of the Ummah is often cited and very vague. The reason I say that is we overuse this term. We need the Ummah to be united. We need the Ummah to be united. But what does that mean? And we should define what that means. To me, the Ummah does not need to be united culturally, nationally, economically, politically. We don't actually need to be united on any of these fronts. In fact, one of the reasons to the rise of Europe is its plurality, its diversity in geopolitical fronts.
The tent's big.
There was a huge competition between all these states happening to a point of military and financial revolutions. Where I think we need unity is something called zeal. Zeal is the collective motivation and vision towards a common goal. That's what propels every single empire to be an empire. And so the problem is that many spokespeople or many Muslims say we need unity, but then they focus unity on politics, they focus unity on religious, beliefs, they focus it on all these other things. Nationality, you're even talking about Bangladesh, Pakistan. No, as long as we all as Muslims collectively have a motivation, a vision that we want to see this ummah have a caliphate or have whatever governance system or have a financial system that is halal and we can use, then that's actually the only thing we need. We need collective motivation. Now, do you guys have any comments before our next segment?
Have you heard of Ummatics?
What was it?
Ummatics.
Educate us, please.
Ummatics.
Yeah, I'm part of it, actually.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Oh, well, then you should talk about it.
Wait,
not
in
me.
line.
No, go ahead.
I mean, so I've heard about it. I heard about it from Dr. Shadi. Shout out Dr. Shadi. Great podcast. By the way.
Al-Masri?
Yes.
Very nice.
Amazing podcast. And also, we talked about it in our class. It's basically a Muslim think tank, correct me if I'm wrong, that's developing and focusing on ideas of how we can either bring back a caliphate or how to push forward. For example, like having soft borders, right? Like with the Muslim countries, having soft borders.
Global entry pass for Muslim
global entry pass. All the leaders come together. All the Muslim leaders come together. They pick one leader that can, is the head person in charge that can rule for a couple of years.
Like a Muslim UN or a Muslim NATO.
Exactly. That's an example of what I heard from Ummatics. I could be completely wrong.
Yeah. So Ummatics is a think tank. It's a Muslim American, Western Muslim think tank. And they bring on media personnel, journalists, anyone in the influential position or power, and we're all in this think tank together, and it's led by Sami Hamdi. And he's currently running a course on it. Shout out Sami
Hamdi.
He's a great guy.
Yeah.
So a part of it, the co-founder of Haque actually is on that started it. Yeah. Great guy. Brilliant, man. The co-founder of Haque. And the other co-founder. Dr. Omar Sayman's incredible too.
MashaAllah.
Okay, so fun facts about Islam. I'm excited to see you guys' reactions to this because I was pretty blown away when I was doing research on this and found out some of the things that I found out on this.
And this is in particular to America, correct?
This is Islam in America.
Okay.
Fun facts about Islam in America.
Let's run it.
The first ever nation to seek diplomatic relations with the United States was the Muslim country of Morocco in 1777. To this day, the treaty remains the longest unbroken treaty of its kind in U.S. history. Any comments, questions, concerns? No, I'm kidding. The second one. Thomas Jefferson, the principal author of the Declaration of Independence, purchased a copy of the Quran in 1765 and began teaching himself Arabic while studying law. It can actually be found in the Library of Congress among the books sold to the institution by the former president and remains among the nucleus of books from which the rest of the library's holdings were developed. So that I was mind blown. I was shocked when I heard that. Another fun fact about Islam in America is that the first recorded Muslim to enter the shores of America did so in 1528, a Moroccan slave called Istaba Nico, who was shipwrecked present-day Galveston, Texas, right here in Texas.
Ooh, Galveston, Texas,
go,
baby.
Yes, sir.
Best beach in the world. That's completely sarcastic.
Shout out to BP oil spills.
Yeah. Shout out BP. Great job, guys.
And Dawn dishwashing soap.
Yeah, 100%.
Is that a
They
thing?
help clean the oil spill with the ducks. At least that's what the commercials told me.
No way.
Yeah, that was the whole. That's their whole.
Do you
bit.
know what he's talking about with the BP spill?
Yeah, I know what he's talking
Just
about.
making
He's an
sure.
educated man.
The Dawn soap thing, like, apparently it cures lice. You're supposed to clean your cat with it.
Yeah.
Like, Dawn dish soap is
Does
everything,
it
huh?
all.
I heard you're supposed to drink it.
It's
if
like
you
the
have COVID.
Costco of soaps.
Dude, don't trump the Dawn.
It cures COVID.
Yeah, 100%. One
Cleans
shot.
you right up.
And he actually traveled throughout much of the American Southwest. He was one of the first to do that. Number 4. There are at least a dozen places in the United States named Medina, and at least 8 named Mecca. Medina, Ohio, which is founded in 1818, was originally called Mecca. The same name was then changed to Medina when it was discovered that a nearby city had already that same name. A 5th one is records from the American Revolutionary War show that a number of Muslims fought for America. Among the recorded names of American soldiers are Yusuf bin Ali and Bampit Muhammad.
Do you know there's a Lake Palestine in Texas?
Really?
There's also Palestine, Texas.
There
There's
is
also
Palestine.
Palestine, Texas.
Yeah, there's a Lake Palestine.
I wonder if the people that live
Is there
there...
a Lake Israel in Texas? No.
I don't think
Is
so.
there a city or town named Israel?
Don't give them any ideas now.
Just saying. Just saying.
I wonder if they support Palestine. It would be really weird if someone lived
What if you
there.
drove in there and it was just Palestinian flags everywhere? Like, where the heck have you guys been?
Wild.
They're
Mass
all white.
migration.
Islam is a major religion. Another one, that kind of started off. Islam is a major religion that decided the turning point of American politics, which is depicted in the evolution of civilization. A mural. I'm never good at saying that word. A mural?
I'm not good at
Mural?
saying words, period.
Mural?
So go ahead.
Yeah, a mural on the dome of the main reading room of the Thomas Jefferson Building in the Library of Congress. Its contribution to human progress is represented physically and illustrated in American history. And the 7th fun fact, this is my last one. The Prophet, peace be upon him, is represented among the great lawgivers of history on a wall at the U.S. Supreme Court building, placed it halfway between the moral figures of philosophy and equity. Did you guys know that one?
I knew that one. That's the one I wanted to share once we were done. But
Oh,
we'll get into
really?
it, yeah.
Maybe-
I knew that one and the Quran one in, I think, 8th grade when we have, like, the trip to D.C. My teacher at the time was like, oh, that's, like, you know, if you ever, at that point, I, like, really want to be in politics. And so she's like, oh, if you, like, ran for office, that's the one you would use to, like, take, you know, your oath. Because, you know, some people use the Bible. If you're a Christian, like, for Muslim, you would use Thomas Jefferson's Quran, which I thought was really cool that you would get to use
I
that.
did not know that.
Yeah, so...
So they use a specific Quran. It's Thomas Jefferson's.
Generally, right? So, I mean, you can use whatever you would like. So, whenever you take oath, right, in November, generally they can pick... I mean, obviously there's multiple options for, like, Bibles. But if it's a Muslim that's being elected, you can use that one or you can use one of your choices. But I think majority of people would be like, yeah, I'd like to use Thomas Jefferson's Quran as, like, the first Muslim president, inshallah, whenever that happens.
Sure.
Very cool.
But, yeah.
This is it right here, Rahim? Yeah, Thomas Jefferson's Quran. Very cool.
I don't know how correct this is. Raheem, maybe you can do the research on it. But I believe the Texas divorce laws are also taken from Sharia law.
Really?
Of divorce. Yeah. Inspired by it, at least.
Search up our Texas divorce laws inspired by Islamic
Or maybe
Sharia.
just U.S. divorce.
I mean, it makes sense, right? So much of scholarship, whether it be legal, medicine, mathematical, so many of those fundamental laws that we know of stemmed during the golden age of Islam, right?
Yep.
With so much learnings and teachings were happening. Man, I was watching something on, TikTok, the number one source of all information.
Yeah.
Where it talks about how, like, when we talk about, like, mathematical theories, right? For Western names, we always have their names referenced. But whenever so many great things that were discovered by Muslim scientists and mathematicians, often we rename them or relabel them, right? It would be like, the Pythagorean theorem, for example, I believe was like discovered in our world before it was discovered. Or not Pythagorean theorem, something else. The quadratic formula was one of those things, right? We call it quadratic formula, but not the guy who discovered it, who happened to be Muslim, right? And this kind of theme kind of continues, which so much in America I think is important to know the involvement and the process of studies and knowledge that was transferred from these other societies that we sometimes have a negative perception on, particularly Muslim Americans, right? And I think if kids earlier on in their lives see the contributions that we have made, even though we may hate Matt at times, plays a key role. I think that does make a difference in terms of how people perceive us over time, but I feel like sometimes it's purposely held back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we got enough.
And so, Dara Coffee.
And we'll take a short break for Dara Coffee.
No, it's just the way you said yeah. I was like, all right, he's going to say something.
Yeah. Pardon?
No, what's interesting about that actually is my white friend. I guess that's a nice way to say it. Should I say?
Should we bring race into this?
I think it is
4th of July.
4th of July, but I think race is important. I think it's something we should all be prideful of, whatever race you have. I don't think it's wrong to identify. But
fine, my non-Muslim friend.
Your non-Muslim friend. Go ahead.
He was like, well, if Europeans, if we're not the dominant, beings on Earth, then how come we've done so much? I was like, you guys actually haven't done.
Wow, what an ignorant statement.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
Yeah,
It's okay if they have ignorant statements.
What else did he say?
That was just his question to me, and I told him just so I don't go on a long tangent here. But I was like, you guys have Europe and America combined have been in power for 400 years. That's less than America. The Ottoman Empire alone. Ottoman Empire lasted, I believe, 620. Yep. And Allah says in the Quran that power is passed down like a baton, each handed from nation to nation. It would be very silly. Yeah, I don't know. You guys know the relay races. That's what I'm quoting from the baton, right?
Olympics.
It would be very silly if the finish line, the person at the finish line or doing the final part of the relay race thinks that they're a faster runner or a better runner than the first runner in that relay race.
Yeah.
It's like you were only able to start at the 400-meter line or wherever because there was so many others that came before you. And just like you were saying, there's so many innovations, so many inventions, over 1,000 that the Muslim world alone, and honestly, India and China, that contributed so much.
I mean, gunpowder, right? I believe it's Chinese.
It's Chinese,
right? I think it's also, we have to look at so much, like there's so many things, right? And I wish like a lot of these things had simple answers. But when we look at, the French Empire, for example, right? To say that you've done so much, at what cost, right? Like, Haiti was one of the wealthiest countries in terms of resources, and that's what made the French so wealthy, because you siphoned all their natural resources, and so on and so forth, to make your nation wealthy and successful. But at what cost, right? Do those people in Haiti not matter as humans? And similar with the U.S., whether it be its involvement of, like, taking over Hawaii for pineapples or other countries for their natural resources, or what we're seeing in Congo for cobalt, right? They're siphoning these natural resources that those people lived that aren't able to take advantage of it. And then when you deplete all of their natural resources and then they're left remaining to fend for themselves, then we say, like, oh, we're so much better than you. Why can't you figure it out? I think that's where I kind of have a problem with that statement at times. I think America has done, great things, obviously, but I think we can't be blinded by the fact, or, if you're French or whatever, you can't be blinded by the fact of how much stealing had occurred to get you to a position where you are in terms of wealth.
Yeah, the more knowledgeable Americans can be, and everyone, honestly, especially even Muslims, about history, their own history, other people's history, the more they'll realize that there is no dominant race.
Yeah.
There is no dominant culture or people.
Sorry, I was doing some research real quick before I made my statement about what your friend said and kind of what you said. We have to think about when Christopher Columbus sailed the sea, right?
Ocean Blue.
Who funded that? It was Queen Elizabeth I,
Mm-hmm.
right? What did they conquer, and what was the money that funded that trip? It was the conquest and conquer of Spain and Granada, where the Muslims were. So for someone to say, like, for that statement to be said, and when I said it was such an ignorant statement to say, is because I don't think people even understand that Columbus wouldn't have been sent out, wouldn't even gotten funded if the Muslims hadn't fallen in Granada, right? So I think that is in itself the height of where the Islamic empire was slowly starting to fall and the rise of the Anglo-Saxon empires that were starting to build. Before that, in order for them to even understand Latin, they had to go learn Arabic, right? And so that's how a lot of these transmissions happened. You brought up math. There's other, astronomy.
Mm-hmm.
There's another thing, maps. All those things have been contributed by Muslims. And I think one thing that you said was really beautiful is knowing our history. And I've been a big proponent of us Muslims knowing our history and understanding the last 100 years is not what defines us as a Muslim people. Islam, the state of Islam, does not define us. You have to look back past that. Mm-hmm. You have to look back at the Abbasids, the Umayyads, the Mamluks, an empire that was built from slaves, right?
I mean, you can even just think about, 1,400 years, how much of that were we powerful?
Exactly.
1,000. 1,000 out of 1,400.
And I think Sami Hamdi said something that was really, really wonderful. I think it was here locally. And it was just the idea of that, I think, as individuals, we tend to look at progression only through the lens of our lives,
yep.
right? And given that, yeah, we're on the, slack and slide of this relay race, right? But we can't lose motivation or hope that we can't get this baton further for the next generations to take it even further, right? And I think sometimes we have to look at the big picture of our involvement in this process of making that change. And I think similarly, going back to like the American identity, like what can we do as Muslim Americans to push this narrative of that the American identity involves the Muslim identity as much, right? Mm-hmm. We shouldn't self-isolate ourselves when we have the opportunity and the ability to further that narrative. Maybe not in our lifetime, but maybe in our children's lifetime or their children's lifetime, the possibility and the reality of Muslim-based policies or that idea can propel forward through legal policies or even positions of office. I think it's something we need to hold that belief that we can make that change.
And I think we're in the right direction. I think the conflict that's going on now has really woken up everyone, especially Muslims, and be like, we need to get our act together. And I think I agree. I don't know if it'll happen in our generation, but I would love for it to continue, for us to do our part, whatever that might be. Right. And push that agenda forward.
Yeah, I think so much is like education. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but at least just speaking from my perspective, right? I remember back in 2008, 2009 when, Israel attacked the West Bank and they were using like white phosphorus bombs and all these other illegal warfare tactics. I remember being in my class and being like, is no one else like bamboozled by what's happening? Right. And a lot of them just didn't know. This time around, complete 180 from what my experience was as an 8th grader and like the people around me. And I think a lot of it comes down to accessibility to information and information not being able to be suppressed, right? I didn't know that there was protests during the invasion of Iraq. Like a lot of Americans didn't want that to happen, that people were actually rallying. But we didn't have Instagram, we didn't have TikTok, we didn't have accessibility to so many other forms of mediums, at least, of communication, whereas now we do. And I think it gives people, it could be good or bad, right, how you get your information, but at least now that you have the option, I do generally believe that the truth does always prevail. And so I think that gives me hope for the Muslim Ummah and, of course, like the trajectory America will go.
What were you guys' experiences growing up in this country? You mentioned being an 8-year-old in your class.
You can go.
Okay. I mean, I wasn't born here. So I moved here in 2002 from Pakistan. So interestingly enough...
how old were you?
I was 6 years old. Interestingly enough, I remember... I still remember when 9/11 happened. I was in my parents' room. I was looking up at the TV. At that time, the movie Die Hard was a big movie, and I was a big fan.
Best Christmas movie.
Best Christmas movie out there. And I called my dad to the room, and I was like, we should, excited, obviously, like, let's go watch this movie. My dad was like,
Okay.
yeah, this is...
For a second.
So
Sorry.
I'm a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
Okay, not a 28-year-old. And my dad's like, yeah, that's not a movie. That's real life. He was saying that to himself, right? Me looking back at it, talking to my father about that. And I remember him telling me later on in the years, thinking that we'll never get to the United States now. Because, 9/11 just happened.
Mm-hmm.
We're coming from Pakistan. Taliban's literally a couple miles north of us. I doubt we're going to get in. SubhanAllah, alhamdulillah, we were able to get through. And I think growing up where I grew up, right here in Carrollton, Texas, it was a very different, like, Dallas isn't what Dallas is now. It's not, Dallas Sharif is Dallas Sharif, mashallah. But we got there. We didn't start there, right? And I think only Dallas natives know about that. I know Sheikh and Jay talked about it a little bit when you was on the podcast with you. So growing up, I got bullied a lot. I'm an only child as well. So got bullied a lot. I had to learn how to fend for myself. My MSA was not a Sunni ran MSA at all. We didn't really have a lot of Sunnis, going to our high school at the time. So, it was a difficult time. Like, you weren't out there, like, you didn't see people walking around with thobes and kufis on in the airport or on the street. You didn't see women just wearing hijabs. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember times where there were bricks that were thrown through my apartment because we were Muslim. I remember hearing about the horrors that were going on in New York, right? I remember those things. I remember growing up playing football and my coaches not knowing how to pronounce my name just called me terrorist boy and go do this. And at that time, since we didn't really have an identity, right, as Muslims, just kind of ran with it. Like, all right, cool. And my way of combating that and, like, I guess pushing forward is, okay, keep talking and I'll blow you up. That's how I tried to survive in middle school and high school without any Muslim friends around. Didn't have any, siblings or anything like that. And my parents were 40s when they mm-hmm. moved here, right? So, and Allah bless my parents. They did the best they could to set up everything for me. And alhamdulillah, I have a great life here now. But growing up, especially after a year after you come after 9/11, actually before we actually moved here July 5th, 2002. That's when I set foot in Dallas. It was a different time growing up, and I'm very appreciative of how far we've came. And I think when we talk about generations and we talk about, like, I couldn't imagine what our parents went through when they were living in the States. I was a kid, so, like, no one's really going to come and try to hurt me or, anything like that. I had my instances in middle school and high school where I would get jumped. But growing up,
for being Muslim,
having the name Muhammad as a legal name, having Muhammad there, that was a big battle growing up. But it also made me really question, like, who I am as a Muslim. Am I, like, should I even stand next to this? I saw a lot of people, including myself, cowered away from being Muslim and being in Islam, right? So that can happen, and can you really blame those people for not having an identity or not understanding Islam at a young age, and all you're doing is getting called out for it, right? Like, that's such a crazy way to think about it. Now, growing up, if you're a 6-year-old, you have all kinds of Islamic schools you can go to. You have classes. You have, communities that are here that have beautiful things. That wasn't a thing growing up. So, I would say very interesting upbringing, but, alhamdulillah.
I appreciate you sharing. Am I allowed to ask questions?
You definitely can.
Yeah, sure.
I'm curious because I think I love the diaspora of, like, everyone's experiences during this time, right? Like, between 2000 and 2001, right? Muslim hate crimes, I fact checked this, I just don't have this in my head all the time, but it increased by 1,600%, right? That's 1,600. It's like a cryptocurrency.
That's a lot.
Right? It's almost like a meme coin. And so... and so I'm kind of curious, and I think everyone has their way of tackling that issue of being isolated For me, it was have no friends, stay at home, and play World of Warcraft. Played a lot of World of Warcraft. For you, it seems like you kind of leaned into the criticisms that you got, and like, okay, I mean, you know, for me, so much of that time was like 2004 or 2003. I'm a big Eminem fan, right? And one of the things that one of his songs was like, you know, I am whatever you say I am. Every day in the news they say I'm, right? Just really like, okay, if that's what you're calling me, I'll embody it, right?
Yeah.
What made you lean into that?
I mean, I would say I didn't really have anything else to kind of fall back on.
Okay.
Right? Like, my parents barely spoke English at the time, right? And there was really two ways I could go. Either continue to fight against these guys.
Like physically or verbally or both?
Both.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And I got to a point where I think one thing that really helped me was I went to the gym, right? Like for you said you kind of closed the door and kind of did your thing. For me, I think another thing that affected me was being an only child, right? The fact that like I didn't have a big brother or a big sister or a young brother or a young sister to really hold my hands with. I just was like, I'm going to get as strong as possible. I'm going to learn how to fight. And when it came to authority, like my coaches or teachers or whatever, I know I can't do anything like that. And I know if I go against it, they'll use that against me. But when it comes to people that are my age, people that are my peers, and they want to go, then let's go, right? Like I'm for it. You want to talk about my people, you want to talk about my religion, you want to talk about my culture, well, I'm down to throw hands. And I grew up in middle school. I remember there would be 8 kids just waiting for me outside of middle school, just waiting. I'll never forget. And I would walk, and it was like a routine thing, and it was a mixture of guys and girls, and they would just start jumping me, and I just got to a point where I just felt curled up. I was all right, just take as many licks as you can, and you know you'll survive. I still remember a girl that straight kicked me in my ribs so hard that I remember I went home, and my mom freaked out when she saw my rib. And she was like, what's going on? Right. And I didn't want to tell my parents, right? Like, how do you tell your parents, oh, I'm getting attacked every day? They're going to freak out.
And they probably, if, you know, you said they don't know English and so many things, they probably feel powerless even more so.
Exactly. Like, what are you going to do? Go to the school? They're not going to be able to understand you.
Right.
So what I ended up doing was I ended up talking to one of my friends. I was like, I need something to protect me. He's like, here's some brass knuckles. And I took brass knuckles from 6th grade to 7th grade every day. And as soon as I got out as soon as I got off of like campus grounds, because that's the thing in Texas, is like if you have a weapon or if you have fights on a campus ground, they're gonna like suspend you, yada yada yada. So I'd walk completely across the street, put on my brass knuckles on, and I would just let it be seen. And then, alhamdulillah, after 7th grade, I hit a growth spurt.
Yeah.
I got really big into working out, started playing football.
Still waiting for mine.
People just and people just stopped messing with me.
Yeah.
Right. So that was kind of the thing.
What's interesting about this, because I know you personally, so I know where the story leads to. Can I ask you about it?
Yeah, for sure.
Did that make you leave Islam or stay, closer to Islam?
Yeah, no. So that led me to leaving Islam. That's a great question. Because my identity was no longer attached to Islam anymore. It was attached to me playing sports. People started liking me because I was good at football. People started liking me because, he's a big, he's a strong guy in 6th, 7th grade. I was getting recruited from middle school. So the big thing in Texas, people might not know, but high schools do recruit kids coming out of middle school. So I was getting recruited. And so at that time, I was like, I'm going to run with this. Like, bump this Muslim stuff. I'm going to run with being a football player, playing sports, and trying to conform into society and in high school, right? And just trying to be like, hey, know me as Asad, the football player, and the workout guy, not Asad the Muslim. So that led me to leave Islam eventually. I think that was like a very slow process. And by the time I was in 10th grade, long story short, I don't know, it depends on wherever you want to go with it. My friend in high school, he's a quarterback of our team. If you know football, you should know Tim Tebow or have some idea of Tim Tebow. He wasn't my quarterback, but he was very Tim Tebow-esque, right? In the sense of like really good Christian guy, really, big in the whole football stuff, godly guy, great guy. Like
classic Friday night. Like
classic Friday night, going to have the ball on the last play, going to score the touchdown. Almost beat Highland Park, which is like a super rich white school here in the Dallas area. Almost beat him. Still hurts. Anyways, I really got attached to my friend here, the quarterback, because I wanted to be accepted, but also be a good human being, right? And I saw him doing that, and through that whole lens, I was also leaving a situation of fear-mongering Islam during that time, where it's like, what is God consciousness? It's really just fearing Allah, not rather than being conscious of Allah. Like knowing that he's watching you, you should just always fear him. If you do this, you're going to go to hell. If you do that, you're going to go to hell. If you do this, you're going to go to hell. So me growing up in a society where I'm not accepted for who I am, trying to fit in by working out, playing football, and not knowing basically anything about Islam. Funny thing is, I grew up in a community where they have a ultra love for the Prophet ﷺ. And when I look back at it, I don't remember ever going over the Sirah, ever. Which is super interesting, right?
Yeah, that's wild.
They would have like the hair of the Prophet ﷺ, and you have to look at it and yada, yada, yada.
Look at it.
Yeah, like you can't turn your back on it. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry.
Walk backwards.
Yeah, no, that happened,
That's
right?
wild.
But that being said, I didn't really know that much about Islam. So when my friend decided to take me to this guy named Gary, who his job was basically to go and convert people in Afghanistan and in Iraq. Interestingly enough,
Shout out to Gary.
Shout out. Maybe
No, not a shout out.
Maybe no shout out to Gary. How about we cut that one? No. So interestingly enough, the church that I went to is now the church that's right across from Qaram. Bentry Church. SubhanAllah, I never, like, that didn't come into realization until like a year, 2 years after Qalam was built. Yeah,
Isn't there like a phrase that says like the closest like heaven and hell being like as close as your fingers or something like that? I feel like there's like, I've like heard that duality.
That's a Raheem check right there. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know, but I feel like heard things like that before.
Yeah, no, I mean, so I when he was talking to me about Christianity, he's talking to me about the Quran, me being so ignorant about my own religion, he's like, look, God is talking about Isa alayhi salam more. He's talking about all these other prophets. He's not even talking about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Little do you know what
Gary converts people from
Islam to Christianity.
Oh, I thought it was the reversal. My bad.
You're good. So no shout out. I'll take that shout out back.
Retract my statement, please.
But at that time, I didn't know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the whole time is talking to who? Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's talking to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam the whole time, right? And so if you think about it, someone that's very ignorant to Islam has grown up in a very fear-mongering type of environment,
And you've had a lot of trauma because of
and
this.
a lot of trauma of getting bullied or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you bring up this savior mentality of Jesus Christ died for your sins, you're forgiven, you're good, just accept him as your Lord and Savior. That's a
cakewalk.
That's a cakewalk, right? So 16 years old, I leave Islam. I believe that was 2010. And I go on this crazy journey of being a Christian for 6 years and then really understanding that Christianity is not it. It's a very flawed religion. Obviously, we all know that as Muslims. But I had to find that in my own way of studying with different, pastors and preachers and kind of just sitting down with them, asking them questions. And then...
You told me that Sheikh Abdul Nasser Jang is actually the one that you took your shahada with.
Yeah.
What made you convert back to Islam?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. So right around 2017, I was probably in the darkest period of my life. And I needed to get out of it. I was not in Dallas. I think the most beautiful thing about a lot of my journey is a lot of the fitting that I went through was outside of Dallas, and I think about the story of the man that killed 99 people, right? And he goes to a monk And he's like, I've killed 99 people. I want to come close to God. He's like, you're screwed. Sorry, you're going to hell. Kills him. Then he goes to the scholar. And the first thing the scholar's like, you need to leave this place. The place that you're in is causing you, or it's putting you in an environment, right? So my environment, where a lot of the jahiliyyah that happened in my life, majority of it, there was a little bit that was in Dallas, but it was in high school, right? Majority of it, as soon as I graduated high school, I'm out of here. I went to Corsicana, Texas. Right after that, I lived in Alabama for 2 years during Trump's time. And I lived in Kentucky, and I lived in LA. So I got to really experience different demographics and how, everything works. But by the time I came back to Dallas, this is about 2018, 2019, but in 2017, I was in a dark place. I needed to get out of that place. I was in Huntsville, Texas. If you know anything about Huntsville, Texas, the 3 biggest prisons in Texas are in Huntsville. One of them has to be the death penalty prison. I was not in prison. Just making that clear.
Also, clarify, I know your story was about someone who killed people. He did not kill anyone. So just be.
What are you talking about?
The story that you shared.
I also did not kill.
Yeah.
Yes. I have not killed anybody. I was like, sorry about that. Yeah. So as I was trying to
wait, the prison had nothing to do with your story?
No, I'm trying to give the concept of Huntsville, where I lived.
Okay.
So 3 prisons there, not the best environment.
Okay.
The team that I was on was known for dealing drugs, mostly cocaine, and I knew that I needed to get out of there. I had a lot of close calls to death, and I had to leave. And surprisingly enough, I left as I got a job at Apple. And I was like, I need to enhance my career and leave this stuff behind. And in that following year, I took up bodybuilding. And I think that's really, so to come back to that question that you asked, what really got you to come back to Islam? I think there was a multitude of things. I think the biggest thing was I realized I'm in the worst part of my life. And in order for me to get out of that hole that I'm digging myself into, I need to better myself as a man. I need to be genuine. I need to be authentic. I need to be kind. I want to be a good person. I want to be a good human being. What do people know Asad for, right? Someone that does a lot of bad stuff or someone that does a lot of good stuff. And I want to do good things, right? So I went down that path in order to get me out of the clubbing jahiliyyah atmosphere of stuff. And plus, this is the first time I left sports. So I was getting a little overweight. I wanted to do bodybuilding. Bodybuilding instilled discipline within me. That made me get up early, go to sleep early. You can't go out. You can't drink. You can't do this. You can't do that. That was in 2019. My mom starts getting sick at the point where I thought she was going to pass. So I was like, I need to get to Dallas now. So I did whatever I can to move to Dallas in May of 2019. I meet my cousin. And this is the first time, shout out my cousin Adil Khan. I love you, bro. It's the first time someone tells me that they love me. They accept me for who I am. They understand that I have tattoos. They understand that I went through a journey of a hard journey. And they mention that I should go to this place called Roots in Dallas, Texas. By the way, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia when he tells me about Roots. I'm like, how do you know about Roots? Right? And he goes, hey, I think it'd be a great place for you to go and start going there. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. I'll do it after my show. Mm-hmm. My show is in August. I'll do it then. And long story short, I go in August. I'm sitting in the back of Roots. At that time, it was at a completely different place. There was this long couch and a water cooler on the corner. And I was sitting between the couch and the water cooler on the floor, right? And Sheikh Abdul Rahman Murphy is actually at Hajj at that time. So it's Sheikh Abdul Nasser Jangda, who is the one that's doing the harakat at that time. And he talks about the maqam of women in Islam. He talks about Khadija Ritala Anha.
The place of women in Islam, right?
Yeah. The place of women in Islam. And how loved and respected they are. And it was like something that I've never heard before. I was like, what is this? This is not Islam. This is not the Islam that I know, right? Like, this is not what I was taught. We talked about love. We talked about respect. We talked about how when the Prophet ﷺ received revelation, he ran to her and she comforted him. Like, I didn't hear any of this, right? And so I go.
You were like, what about his hair?
Yeah, like
What about the kaboom part?
Did they,
I thought that's all I've been
did
told.
they pluck any hairs or anything? and you know, interestingly enough, man, Sheikh is amazing. Man, Allah bless him, man. He's very patient and he stays. And there's always a long, like if you've been to Roots or if you've been to if you go to a khutbah at Valley Ranch and you see Sheikh Omar Suleiman, there's usually a line of people that are waiting to talk to him. And our mashayikh are amazing people. They'll wait and they'll talk a lot of times. Unless they're really busy, they'll sit and talk, right?
They'll follow up if they don't have time.
And they'll follow up if they don't have time. And Sheikh NJ has a whole line, and I'm at the end of the line. And I talk to Sheikh at the end. And, you know, him and I are just talking. Cool thing is he's from Texas. I'm from Texas, right? So there's already a lot of connection going on. And he goes, where'd you grow up? And I told him I grew up in Carrollton, Texas. He asked me the masjid that I grew up in. I mentioned. He's like, it's okay. I understand. He says, what do you want to do next? I was like, this sounds like a lot of what I want to be. So can we run this back? And he's like, yeah, 100%. And so I go ahead and take the shahada with him, and kind of the rest is history there.
Then and there.
Wow. And I stayed at Roots. I became a volunteer in there, alhamdulillah. Roots
So would you say Sheikh A&J is the reason you converted back? One of the reasons? Like, I mean, obviously, the last stop.
Yeah, I think he was like that push, right? Like, I think the journey of like me trying to, I think a lot of people that find Islam are people that are trying to better themselves. Genuinely. I don't think it's, I don't think it's like, oh, what is the history of the Bible and like who is John and Paul and who's Mark? Like, I understand that aspect of it. And I understand there's not a lot of backing there in the Christianity part of things, right? But I think most people, I could be wrong, but most people that find Islam, that either come back to Islam or convert to Islam, are people that want to be better. They want to be better. They want to be sincere. And that's what Islam does, right? Like, Islam helps you become a better person, right? Being a better person is just as equivalent to being a better Muslim. Yeah. Right? So I think that's what got me there personally. I think the bodybuilding helped me stay disciplined and took me away from a lot of things. I try to reflect back on, like, Ya Allah, how, like, not how, but like, why did you bring me back, A? And B, like, how did this all happen? Because when I look back at my life, and there's times where I could have passed away due to drug use or other, illegal activities. There's times where I look back and I'm like, I shouldn't be here, but I'm only here because of Allah, and I'm grateful for that, right? But the process of trying to better myself as a man, I believe truly, is how Allah guided me to come back to Islam. And Sheikh NJ was, I mean, it's Sheikh NJ. I don't really have to say much for him, mashallah.
SubhanAllah, man.
Sorry, it was a long segment.
No, that's the whole point.
But yeah.
I've been wanting to hear the story actually for a while.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. Alhamdulillah, man. Alhamdulillah.
Did you have a similar experience at all, or what was your...
My boy, cool. East Texas, baby. East Texas, baby.
Yeah, I think there's like so much... There's a lot that's similar between all of us, especially with your story, and I think mine was in a different angle. I think for you kind of leaned into your experience, where for me, I kind of found, I guess, security in humor, and that's kind of where I leaned into it. And maybe that's just because I wasn't a big guy or anything like that, or sports. I just found comedy to be the way I can get to connection with people. So in elementary school is probably the first time when I had an interaction that was racial tension or religious tension. And I was exiting off of the bus, and this is pretty much right after we moved back to the US. And I was getting off the bus, I didn't know English, and this girl in front of me spits on the floor of the bus and then tells the bus driver that I did it. And of course, I had no idea how to explain to them that it wasn't me. And, the bus driver wouldn't let me get off the bus unless I cleaned it up. So I cleaned up her spit, got off the bus, and just, unloaded all the cuss words in Bongo that I could at this other first grader. And my brother just trying to, grabbing onto me and calming me down. After that, in elementary, I didn't really feel a lot of tension or aggression towards me. At that point, we were living in Kansas, and then we moved to Texarkana, which is a small town in East Texas. And there, it was pretty smooth for the remaining part of my elementary years. And it wasn't really until middle school where post 9/11 and cliques started forming in middle school, where microaggressions and full-on aggressions really began. And it was during this time where I kind of moved away from my friend group at that time in like 5th and 6th grade, just because they were getting involved in a lot of bad things, drugs, sex, alcohol, you name it. And so I kind of took a step back away from that, mostly just because I didn't know. But I think with the DARE program, I kind of got educated that those are things we should not be doing at that age, or ever. And so started staying away from them, and I kind of found like safety in video games. And right around 05, 04, World of Warcraft came out. My brother was playing, and so I was like, oh, let me try it out. And that's when my world kind of took a huge shift, because at this point, my world became East Texas to global society. So I was now talking with people in New York or LA who are doctors or engineers or just college students. And so my vocabulary and skill set and like comedy kind of also grew a little bit faster. And so I started watching, different TV shows that adults were watching that people in my grade weren't watching. And so a lot of people in my grade didn't want to hang out with me at that time because my humor was a bit more mature. I was cussing and all these other things. And for them, it was bad. And it was bad, but it was just different. And in middle school, around like 6th grade, I probably had my first like alteration, like an actual like physical fight. Obviously, I couldn't fight. And so it was in the library. I was exiting, and this kid essentially said all these like really hurtful things and then pushed me around. And I didn't know what to do. And so the only teacher that I had a close relationship with was with the librarian herself. And she actually knows that kid's family pretty well. His brother was actually serving in Afghanistan at the time, which at this time was obviously like a very noble cause. And she had kind of set him straight, saying like, how could you be doing this to someone who, we're going there to save people like them and protect them, and you are here assaulting someone of, this background of a faith. And that was like the first time someone like stood up for me and advocated for me, because I feel like generally for teachers, when you get bullied, it's just like, oh, they won't do it again, slap on the wrist, and then you move on, right? And so that was a really key opportunity for me, at least learning as a child. It was like standing up for those, even if they don't look like you, believe like you, or think like you, it's the right thing to do, and that's why you should do it. Going into high school, things really shifted. At this point, I really wanted to like rebrand myself. I knew the only way to get out of this town was education and, getting good at that. And so I got really lucky. For me at this time, nobody in my grade liked me. And so everyone that was a senior in particular thought my humor was incredible because they were cussing. Yeah. They were watching the TV shows that people online were doing. And so
like Family Guy in South Park and
exactly. And so the student body president at the time, who was like the most popular kid, thought it was hysterical. And so he kind of took me under his wing, helped me get friends through his circle. And so things kind of started trickling down in terms of my coolness. And probably one of the few times any sort of trickle down economics actually works and is for clout. And it was here where, the juniors were like, oh, who's this cool freshman? The seniors like him a lot. And then the sophomores thought the same because the juniors liked me. And then eventually got to my grade and they're like, maybe Naveed isn't too bad, right?
Pretty cool guy.
Yeah, maybe we should get to know him. And so at this point I was like, maybe, let me try to run for student council, because my friends, my friend who kind of helped me shift my friend circle was in it. It was something I thought would be worth getting involved in. And that's really when I got involved. Any sort of civic representation or caring about people voting was here in high school. And lo and behold, I won somehow, but I got like the most bottom role in student council. But at that point, I'm now getting invited to go to all the volunteer opportunities in the town and things like that. So I got to meet the mayor and like the representatives. And so it was a really cool experience to being Muslim, but also knowing that you can be involved, even if your town and your school identity is very much the polar opposite of what you are. And years go by, and of course in high school, which is one of my crowning achievements, was winning student body president as someone who was, visually Muslim, who wasn't necessarily a conservative or any of these identities, but still was able to earn the trust of people of being like, oh, like he's someone we can lean on and believe in, even if we don't agree with him on so many other perspectives. And at this point, I was very much agnostic, religiously speaking, because everyone else was really painting my representation of what Islam was. I never really got that proper education, like similar to you, like the Sirah and all these things, right? And going into college is really where my religious identity started maturing. And it was really the pivotal moment was when my dad passed away. Everything kind of hit rock bottom for me. Like financial support was gone. My grades started going way down, so my scholarship was gone. Didn't really want to trouble my mom and my brother, right, about the hardships that I was facing. I was combating homelessness, and so it was like anything that could go wrong was going wrong.
So you lost even the dorm with that scholarship? You
Correct.
lost dorming?
Yeah. And so a lot of those
Where'd you
things
live?
were the library, the good old PCL. So the PCL was 24/7. The gym was right next door. So I would shower there. I would crash on the couch. The majority of my stuff was like split between like my friends' places. And so I would like couch hop at times. And there's also a sense of pride, right? Like I don't want to be bumming at my friend's couch, constantly. I don't want to like talk about it a lot. And so it was a very difficult period. And so I remember like at 4 a.m., I was also very angry too. Like even though I was agnostic, I was like angry at God at the situation. And I remember being in the Six Pack, which is like the main part of the UT Austin campus. And I felt helpless. I didn't know what to do, right? I didn't know who to lean on, but I was like, you know what, let me pray. I've never I prayed, I say in quotes, my mom like tells me to pray, but never on my own accord did I want to like do any form of salah, right? Or even make dua or anything. And in that moment I was like, let me just do it. What can be worse, right? Did it, and then immediately I felt a sense of like relief. And I remember turning around, and on the main hall, which is like the main building where the UT tower is, there's a quote that just essentially says, "The truth will set you free." And at that point, I was like, you know what? Let me try this religion thing one more time. And so I kind of just made a pact to myself, like I want to learn about Judaism, I want to learn about Christianity, Hinduism, and then of course like Islam eventually too. And that kind of led me into the path, alhamdulillah, like where I am now, of just constantly seeking knowledge and, not necessarily validation, but that curiosity of seeking the truth being my guiding light. And it's been a wonderful experience since then, but I wouldn't change anything in my life because alhamdulillah, it brought me where I need to be. But I think that's like the fascinating hearing these stories of different Muslim Americans and what they went to, because there's no identity, there's no group of Americans that haven't had their own struggles, whether it be the Irish, whether it be, African Americans, whether it be the Chinese, like different parts of American history. Those who come into this country
Hispanic
had
community.
their Hispanic community.
Yeah.
Everyone had their struggles. Everyone, and we still do, right? But in a weird way, that identity struggle of combating of what is your identity that you're coming from and the new identity that you're building as an American, that struggle in itself, I think, is the American identity, right? It's unfortunate, but I think it's that struggle that we all have in common, whether it be a religious or a national or, racial background. And I think that's like, it's a weird and unfortunate rite of passage I like to think about. But yeah.
Sadly, we missed out on the time period where we can make mafias,
Yeah. It's so true. So much of the economy is based off of that.
No, that's beautiful, man. So Islam helped you deal with your father's passing, you would say?
Absolutely. I think it was definitely, and it's so unfortunate that I was mad at Allah at that time, but I really didn't know any better, right? Like for me, I was like, why is this happening to me? And I always knew that my dad was going to pass away when I was in college because he'd always had health issues and things like that. And that was like a whole separate battle I had leaving Texarkana, was that I know if I leave, my dad's going to die. Like there's like a certain truth that I had. But I also knew that my parents did not come to America, go through all this struggle for me to dim how bright I can glow, And I think that's something that motivated me to know that at the end of the day, it is about passing that baton forward, right? My dad gave up a lot of his dreams to make sure we move forward in the dreams that we can accomplish. And there's times that I have to make sacrifices, and inshallah, if I have a family, that I will have to make more sacrifices so they can grow. Ideally, we want our kids to be better, smarter, faster in every way capacity than us, right? That's the ideal situation. And I think similarly as Muslims, that's what we want. The ummah that we give to the next generation, we want to give it to the best position that we can for them to be successful.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you while you were talking. Would you say that you were closer to Allah when you were angry at him than you were before your dad passed away?
I think for me, my belief in God became more of a reality when my dad passed away.
So I mean,
Does that make sense?
yeah, and so because when I'm listening to
Yeah,
you, right,
yeah.
you were saying like you were away from the religion, you were away from a lot of things, but as soon as the passing of your dad happened,
Yeah.
your one of your immediate reactions, maybe not the first one, right? One of your reactions were to be angry with Allah.
I punched the wall and I cursed God. That was my first
So,
reaction.
one of the first two or first ones, right?
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know. I'm trying to look at it in a different light.
Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful thing in the sense of the passing of your dad is honestly the reason what got you back to Islam, in the sense of you being angry with Allah. You wouldn't have been angry with Allah if your dad hadn't passed. Therefore, you would have still been away from Allah.
And I think that's like the weird part. It's like, and when I say curse, it wasn't more so like, making an insult towards Allah, but just more being like really, really angry and like frustrated.
SubhanAllah.
Right? And I think it's at that moment, when they talk about this, right? It's like even people like, in elementary school, I had an atheist friend who had just moved into town, right? And everyone was willing her. And I was like, let me be friends with this person. And she was the kindest person to me. In my entire like middle school, elementary period was this atheist, right? Someone who denies the existence of God was the kindest person to me, right? In a sea of Baptist Christians. But I think at that time, being agnostic or being, borderline atheist, they talk about how like when something calamity is about to strike, that's when you're like, oh God, please help me.
Yeah.
Right? It becomes a reality. Like that's your instinct. And for me, it's like that became the instinct. And like at the worst news I've received up in, at this point in my life was that where I was like, I'm now admitting that God is in the conversation. Before it wasn't. It was Richard Dawkins in the conversation, right?
Alhamdulillah.
So yeah, it was definitely in hindsight when you bring it up, it was definitely the first domino.
Takes a lot of love and a hate. Right?
Yeah.
So the same part of your brain that hates someone is attached to the same part of your brain that loves someone.
So much with the relationships. I don't know about y'all, but I feel like relationships with parents, right? I love them, but there's time I hate them. It's like, why are you doing this to me, Mom? Like, I want to do this, right? And so, but I know that they're sincere, that they're coming with like good intentions and love. And I think for me in my relationship, I think it was that.
Yeah, may Allah have mercy on your dad and grant him Jannah and allow you to join him, inshallah, in heaven. SubhanAllah, I've known you guys for a while now, and I didn't know this about you guys. I felt like I wanted to hear it here, almost. And
Great place to use the platform to talk about the story.
And subhanAllah, for anyone that's entering the Muslim community anew, and they come into Qalam, and you guys are now regulars. You guys are actually a big part of the Muslim community in Texas. And they think they can't relate, and they think all these people are better than them. They put everyone on a pedestal. I brought my Muslim friend who it was not very close to Islam to Qalam, and he just felt like everyone was on this pedestal. And if only he knew there are walking stories like this all around that are big parts of the community, subhanAllah. We shouldn't judge. We even judge our own selves. We judge our own communities and put a label or a cover to the book before we find out the story behind it, subhanAllah. So we're actually getting to the last part, last segment. You guys ready?
Let's run it.
I'm not ready.
Is it Star Spangled Banner?
I don't know what you're about to do. I don't know what you're about to do.
He's grabbing something under the table here.
Gentlemen, please put your hats back on for this final segment. Bought these hats. You took them off. I was pretty upset.
Yeehaw, partner.
Amar, where are you, bro?
I'm here.
Oh, you're coming in? No. Don't do that.
Little Wizard of the Oz.
Huh?
Little Wizard of the Oz behind the curtain.
Yeah, don't point it at them either. I think you can't do it
indoors. Should I get my boots on for this?
Pointing guns at people?
Yeah.
This is...
You ready? You ready? 3, 2, 1, let's go.
Oh, Lord.
Oh,
Woo!
Let's
go!
go!
Let's go!
Yes, sir.
Okay.
America. USA. USA.
Put the national anthem back on. We didn't finish it. Don't do it.
No. You're joking.
Don't make me.
Put your phone up. Put your phone
funny
up.
guy, you didn't get that, huh?
Yeah, takes a literal, huh? Give him an inch, takes a mile type of guy.
This segment is called How American Are These Muslims? Y'all ready? So these are some of the questions that are asked in the American citizenship exam.
I tell you what,
Let's do
boy,
it.
I tell you what.
What Question number 1. Oh my God, these confetti's everywhere.
By the way, did you study for this, Naveed?
I didn't.
Okay.
Well, I did in high school.
I'm not a citizen, so
For
this is for.
AP US history.
When I pass this,
but-
do I get my green card?
Nice.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Good plugging that in there. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
No.
I scored a 4.
Yeah, he's not a citizen. I learned that later. We can talk
We can talk about that. Maybe another part 2. Next July 4th.
Here. All right.
What is the supreme law of the land in America? This is an easy one. Don't overthink
Is
it.
anybody?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Constitution?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
What are the first 3 words written in the Constitution?
We the people.
Yes, sir. That was really good.
good.
That was pretty
That's
fast.
pretty easy.
What is an amendment?
Making a change to the Constitution or
There we go.
removing it?
You definitely looked.
I mean, that's a pretty easy one.
By definition, it's that.
That's
That's
like
the definition of
literally
amendment.
in any other law too. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that till I saw this.
Now, if you ask me how many, then I'd probably choke. So don't make that a question. 27?
26, I think.
26? Yeah, 27, 27, 26.
Raheem, run it.
No, I have it here.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
don't worry.
Oh, that was one of the questions.
Yeah, how
Oh.
many amendments does the Constitution have? 27. Dude, I swear these guys are lying, capping
What
about
the
that.
heck?
All we know is
See-
I might get my green card by the end of this session, brother.
Yeah.
Bismillah.
What do we call the first 10 amendments in the Constitution?
The Bill of Rights.
Okay, how many U.S. senators are there?
Ooh,
How many U.S. senators?
isn't
Oh,
that 2 per state?
435. 430?
You're talking about House of
No,
Representatives.
Oh,
it's
senators.
two for, it's two for
50.
every state.
Two,
no,
yeah,
2 for
100,
every state, so
100,
it should be like 100 or
100.
110.
100,
yeah.
100, yes. I'm going to give that to you, Asad.
It's not a competition. It's not
I
a
know-
competition.
I wish I brought a
Why are you trying to pin us against each other?
against each other.
Yeah, just because he's
You're
Bengali.
just like America.
Yeah, he just said like he's Bengali and I'm Pakistani. Oh, sorry, he's Bangladesh and I'm Pakistan. You want to put us against each other?
We're UN ambassadors now.
You cannot separate us.
We elect a U.S. senator for how many
2 years.
Senator, 6 years.
Look at that cockiness. It's 6 years.
Oh.
Yeah, that's right.
2 years is representative.
Yeah,
We
hey,
both flipped.
it's okay.
Question
We
back
can be
to back.
wrong.
I know.
Hey, man, that was the next question,
You're
bro.
not-
Oh, sorry.
I'm jumping ahead.
We saw a little bit, brother.
Dang, I'm out of questions.
Well, we passed.
You guys, because you guys took 2 questions with your little high five. All right,
Maybe
fine.
the
You seem a little angry there. Brother. How about we ask you some questions about Bangladesh? How about you?
Oh, yeah. How about that?
When was Bangladesh gained its independence?
1960. Was that right?
That's wrong.
That's
1947.
no.
47?
No.
Brother, World War II was happening.
Pakistan was
Ooh.
1947.
This is looking rough.
2025.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's definitely not 2025. But,
1971. You guys are acting like I was way off. This
you said you were 11 years off, brother. Yeah, you said 1960.
Whatever, man. I was a one pubescent child away.
That's crazy.
Okay. Fun facts about American Muslims. We have actually time for this.
Okay.
In 2000, what would you actually say is the breakdown of the nationalities / race? You can use a little bit of both of the American Muslim population. How many of them do you think are white?
Ooh, not that many.
Not that many.
40% are white. How many do you think are Asian?
40% are white?
Well, because Arabs are.
Oh, yeah, because the
Okay, so that doesn't count.
Okay,
that
doesn't
doesn't count.
Yeah.
They would be Middle Eastern.
I think
not
they
white.
just recently added that as an option now, right?
Yeah.
No,
No? Or is it
Arabs
still an
when they
issue?
first moved to this country were
They
like,
said
we
white.
gotta be white.
Right, right. Well,
White is right, boy.
yeah.
How many are Asian? Now that you know 40%
60?
are white.
No.
Oh, so the rest of them are.
20% was African Americans.
Yeah. I don't know. 30 maybe? 10? I would assume Pakistanis
I'll
like,
say-
came and
I'll-
took over. this
Around
place.
30%.
Yeah, 30 makes
I was
sense.
gonna
All right, how many are Hispanic?
5.
Yeah. I would say-
Jeez, no.
I would say.
It's growing, right?
I
It's
would
the fastest
say. I would
growing.
say 3.
11%.
MashaAllah.
let's go. I love being
Come
wrong.
on.
And then 20%, please don't do the math on these percentages, are black.
Raheem, add them up.
This is actually pretty interesting. I didn't know this about entrepreneurship. American Muslims are the most likely to be self-employed or run a business
That
than
makes
the
sense.
American general public.
That makes sense.
7-Elevens, baby.
How many Muslims, what's the percentage of American Muslims do you think are entrepreneurs?
I want to say 35%.
We would be running this country if that was the percentage. So
Yeah.
I'll give you another chance. on that.
Okay,
I was-
15.
I would say like 12.
8%.
Oh, man. Let's get to 35.
Our businesses,
That's
businesses, Muslim American businesses support more than 1 billion jobs in the United States. Education.
1 million or 1
1 million. Did I say
Okay.
billion?
You
I
said
heard
Sorry.
billion.
Wow.
Well,
yeah. It's not even.
We will be ruining the
world.
world.
We would be.
Inshallah.
And we have a growth mindset. I appreciate
I
that.
love it. We'd be different people.
Back to Asad's optimism,
Yeah.
earlier, bro.
Hey.
Bro, I was like, how many Muslims pray? He's like, all of them.
Yeah.
Inshallah,
One day,
bro.
One day.
Inshallah. How many American Muslims have college? What's the percentage of American Muslims have college degrees?
I think majority. I would say above 50%.
I want to say 65.
I'd say like 70.
I love the optimism.
Ooh.
So this is Pew Research, so they might be a little off. 46%.
No
Wow.
way. I don't believe that.
I mean, for a demographic to be that educated, it's pretty high, no?
Yeah.
How is it compared to others?
The general public in America is 38%.
Oh, let's go.
Let's go
But if you
Muslims.
do Muslim immigrants, if you remove native Muslim Americans, then it goes
Jumps.
over 50%.
Yeah, I figured.
Okay. History-wise, how long ago do you think the first Muslims came to America?
So slavery?
Wasn't it like, probably 1600s?
So-
1500s?
Yeah,
maybe?
400 years ago, the first Muslims to arrive were enslaved from Western Africa.
What a story.
How many African Muslim slaves do you think were transferred here?
1,000.
I mean,
I'm guessing,
I
obviously.
mean, Western Africa, I mean, that's where what Muslim was. There's a big Islamic empire there. I would say quite a bit.
600K to 1.2 million slaves brought to
Out of
America
how many slaves?
were Muslims.
Out of how many? That were full.
I don't know. How many slaves were brought to America, Rahim, overall?
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's actually all the ones that I have. I have
Yo,
this
America.
Library of Congress.
10
10.
million?
10
so
million.
10% were Muslim.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and actually the first 3 shipments of
Yeah.
slaves, 40% were Muslim. But then slave owners were like, stop bringing over these Mohammedans. They're harder to enslave.
Really?
Yeah, we were harder to enslave.
Yo, let's go.
Yeah.
I have a question. I'm curious on this. I don't know if you know, but for the Muslim slaves that were sold off, were they sold off or captured? Like, were they under like Muslim rulership or kings, etc.? Does that make sense what I'm trying to ask?
So the vague answer that I have from my understanding is the reason why they specifically went to West Africa is because of Mansa Musa. If you look at the Atlas map, and Mustafa Briggs talks about this in our episode, that they illustrated Mansa Musa as the richest area. So when they became powerful as Europeans, they wanted to go to the richest area they thought in the world. And so they went to West Africa rather than any other region. So at first it was actually an anti-Islamic slave trade, and then it quickly became racialized.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. That's actually all the questions I have for you guys. Do you guys have any final thoughts or comments?
I think you should brush up your history on Bangladesh.
Hey, man.
I think we should definitely work on that. That was
Hey, I usually get it right. I'm telling you, it's
That
the
was
cape,
crazy.
it's the bow tie.
that's wild.
It's okay. I appreciate you speaking
I
up
got
for
you,
that.
bro.
Thanks, man.
Still trying to make up for Pakistan and what they did. So
Yeah.
you know, let's just work on it. It's okay.
Yeah. No. Hey, you guys like my bow tie though? It's pretty nice, right?
Pretty good.
I can't make those.
The hat
comments.
I was fond of, but it's too similar. It's more like a French flag,
It is.
which now I don't like it.
Because as soon as you mentioned France
Yeah, I know.
earlier,
Yeah,
I
it
was like,
kinda
it
set in
looks
for
like
me.
I know, and I just got back from Vietnam, so I'm very
You are.
anti-French right now.
you were in Vietnam.
I
Interesting.
was, yeah. Great place. Highly recommend visiting. Southeast Asia, great places to be. So
A lot of people, Jitmud, the Ustaz Jitmud, the one that forgave his son's killer, that episode, people think he's Indonesian. He's actually Vietnamese.
really,
Wait, right? No, sorry, he's Thai.
Please make
He's
sure
Thai.
that that's.
Well, I
Hold on,
was-
pause.
Yeah, I know.
Was this a guest on your show,
Yeah.
brother?
I just corrected
That's
myself.
you're 0 for 2 right now.
I just corrected
0
myself.
for 2 is wild.
I mean, I did fly back. I wasn't.
You did fly back
Yeah.
early for this podcast,
I
and this
did.
guy decides to get the
I
independence
know.
of your
I don't know.
country wrong,
Yeah.
gets other people wrong.
My dad was also a freedom fighter. Crazy enough.
SubhanAllah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
You know what a freedom fighter is?
Well, yeah, it's in the name. I'm glad this is the end of the episode. You're about to start.
Yeah, I was waiting for this part where I can start.
So I actually do have some final comments. Dr. Omar Suleiman wrote an article where he cites a study conducted by Sanat Asir. She was actually the one I quoted earlier, who did a study on internalized hatred. I think you guys' story really resonates with this study. Among Muslim children in San Francisco, and she focused on children between the ages of 5 to 9 and captured their brutal honesty. And the study found that the insecurities developed by these children led them to try to develop dual personalities that helped them blend in as efficiently as possible. They distinguished between American and Muslim in their conversations with their peers, demonstrating that they often felt like they had to choose the easier identity to fit in depending on their environments. The author concluded that 1 in 3 children did not want to tell others that they were Muslim, 1 in 2 children did not know whether they could be both Muslim and American, and 1 in 6 children would sometimes pretend not to even be Muslim. And I think that was something that you guys beautifully illustrated so organically and naturally in your stories, that many Muslim Americans over time develop this dual personality. They're Mo at school and they're Muhammad in the masjid or at home. It's an unsustainable reality to live in, and the shaitan and even your own nafs, your own self, forces you, begs on you, pleads with you to choose. And most Muslims choose the easier route. In fact, about 70% of Muslims don't even go to the masjid. And I think all 3 of us were one of them, some of them. So I hope this episode was of benefit to people, and I pray that we as Muslims can do a better job of being proud of our American identities, but also being proud of our Muslim identities and allowing that to cultivate, and like you were saying, into the next generations where, like the rites of passage of Italians and others, right?
Inshallah.
Asad Irfan, Naveed Haque, thank you so much for joining the podcast, brothers.
Thank you so much for having us. This is awesome.
Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed.
Keep up the good work, man. We're proud of you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate y'all.
Things like this that move it forward.
Yes,
So,
sir. Yes,
thank
sir. And don't forget, there are coffee.
Yeah.
The Fuel
I already
Energy.
finished it. I finished 2 of them
Hey,
already.
man, don't mess up my sponsorship message.
Oh, they were really good.
The Fuel Energy of the Ansari Podcast. Thank you guys for listening to the Ansari Podcast.